we're going to be talking about how science substantiates the Scriptures. Now, ordinarily when people deal with this subject, they deal only with creation, evolution. However, out of 5 in this series, we'll only deal with that on the first one. Now, there's a great multitude of material available for you on creation, evolution. And there's many good writers on this subject. In my opinion, the works of Dr. Henry Morris are superior to all. So if you're interested in far more than that, you can get those works. So we'll deal this first session on creation evolution, how science substantiates the Scriptures in relation to the creation as opposed to evolution. Now in the next 4 series will be things that you rarely hear anything about. Now the next of this series, we'll talk about how science substantiates the Scriptures in relation to the dividing of the earth in the days of Peleg as opposed to the continental drift theory, which took millions of years. And in that discussion, we'll include much information concerning the polar caps and global warming. And then in the third session, we'll speak of how science substantiates the Scriptures in relation to the historical accuracy and the antiquity of the Scriptures. Then in the fourth session, we'll deal with how science substantiates the Scriptures in relation to the fact that all humanity sinned when Adam sinned, as opposed to the idea that we could not have sinned because we were not there. Yet, scientifically and genetically, we can see how we were all there and sinned in Adam. Then in the last session, we're going to deal with how science substantiates the Scriptures in relation to the deity and the holiness of Christ, as opposed to the idea that Christ could not be holy and that he could not be God in the flesh because he was born of a sinful woman, and because the Scriptures also teach that like reproduces like, and the Scriptures also teach that a clean thing cannot come forth from an unclean thing. And that sounds very logical, but yet when we look at the scientific facts concerning genetics, we can see how that Christ was God, a very God, and totally holy. So in this first session, we're going to be dealing with how science substantiates the Scriptures in relation to creation as opposed to evolution. Now in Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, the Word of God simply says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth." A very simple statement, and God did not make any elaboration upon it. God did it in a period of 7 days. There's a general statement, and then there's the creation of all things in a 6-day period. Then in Genesis chapter 2 in verses 1 through 3, the Word of God says this, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made." Also, in Exodus chapter 20 and verse 11, the Scriptures say this, "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." And then in Psalm 33 and verse 6, the Word says, "By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth." Now what he's saying by this is simply this. By the word of the Lord spoke, and it was. In other words, as he spoke, he expended the energy that was necessary to make all matter that there is. And we know that there's all that there is in all of the universe, all matter, can be reduced to energy. And that energy came from God. That is Psalm 33:6. Then also in Psalm 33 and verse 9 it says this, "For he spake, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast." So God spoke, and it was. All that was brought into existence in that speaking of the energy of God, then over a 6-day period he formed it into the shape that he would have it to be. And then we find in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, in the first 3 verses, the Word of God says this, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made."